Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This episode's gonna be a fun one. Today we're gonna destroy this colony. We're gonna use some imaginative techniques to do so, probably using a lot of hot steam. Before we do that though, I want to kind of go over everything that we did and everything that we accomplished in this playthrough. Definitely one of the highlights of the series for me was the dupe condos. Absolutely love the dupe condos and all of the little touches that we put inside of each condo. The dupe condos also have the recreation room. After a long, hard day's worth of work, you can go play some video games or do some dancing. I like our dupes to live the good life. Some other features is we ran glossy Drecos and regular Drecos for majority of the playthrough. And that is over 1900 cycles and 141 hours worth of a playthrough. I've had some questions come up. Why am I feeding the normal Drecos mealwood? That only increases their chances to lay glossy Dreco eggs. And you would be right. Even after eating mealwood all their life, they still are likely to lay regular Dreco eggs. You can see here, the chances of them laying a Dreklet egg are 11% here, 6%. It's enough to where we are usually able to keep 2 Dreklet eggs in these incubators at all time, which is enough to keep the Dreklets going. So you don't have to mess with the chlorine with the balm lilies or the pinch of pepper nuts. You'll still have enough regular Dreklet eggs to sustain the stable. Another one of my favorite parts of this series is the dupe-free sustainable source of Pacu fillets, which is feeding experiment 52B. Now, it's still only up to 46 kilos. This process would need to run for a lot longer, and remember, we just started feeding this tree a couple episodes ago. It could run sustainably forever. At final count, it looks like we have 50 Pacu in here. We have 4 eggs here, and then another 6 eggs here, and a couple other Pacu in here. So overall, I think at sustainability, it's about 60 Pacu. We are completely out of algae, so that is the maximum number of Pacu that this stable will maintain. We also completely cored out Smelliel. There's still onesies and twosies on the ground, but I wanted to make sure Ironhide didn't come back. He's gonna enjoy Fertilla up until its last moments. Everybody's together, and we recently celebrated the creation of 3 monuments. First, we have Frankie with the critters, and then we have Meep admiring the rocket probably a little too well. And who can forget the contributions of Rover? So we decided to memorialize him in monument form as well. I do wish, though, that we had a monument midsection that was the robot and not a dupe. We also had a sustainable source of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. It took a while to spin up. Some changes I think I would make the next time I would build it is I'd build it higher, so that we wouldn't have to go up and around to get these pipe segments. I'd make sure that I built the rockets first, and that way I knew exactly where to align the liquid hydrogen and the liquid oxygen chambers. I like that we kept the teleporter transmitter and the teleporter receiver in the Gravitas building. Whenever you can keep a little bit of the POIs, I really think it kind of sets off the look of your colony. How could we talk about this series without mentioning the volcano sauna? This volcano sauna served us with power for many, many cycles. Now it's being subsidized by a huge surplus of natural gas and some natural gas generators. This volcano sauna was even made better by the addition of the supercoolant. So now it's usually only 2 thermo aqua tuners that it takes to sustain these. At one time, we had hundreds of molten slicksters. We eventually had to cull them, and we also had the great igneous rock spike that we had to clean up, which destroyed a lot of the larvas themselves. If I had to do this differently, I think I would do a couple of things. I would extend this even further. And the reason why is because I want more rail space. I'd want rails all the way through the side of the map. But this way, I could also separate some of the rail segments into a cold chamber. So once it exited this hot area, it would go through a purposely built cold chamber. And that way we wouldn't have to resort to something like this. Now, it's done a decent job. Our igneous rock in here is only 55 degrees at max, which is pretty good. So now I have no problem sweeping it up and sending it back into our colony. I think it would be more efficient if we just had a cold room and the rails went through the cold room in the final stage of that igneous rock cooling. In the end, water was definitely a concern. I've been using this sort of meter method to make sure that we are in a water positive process, and we are, depending on the dormancy of some of our steam vents and our cool slush geyser. We have a cool salt slush geyser that is responsible for sustaining our oxygen supply, and it is backfed by the other water supply as well. And then we have our beautiful major volcano taming and igneous rock extractor. This system worked out very well. The temperature in here, I've managed to maintain it around 180 degrees, which keeps these steam turbines going at near max efficiency all the time. It does take a while for this igneous rock to cool down because of the size of this chamber. If I were to do it again, I'd make this chamber a little bit bigger, add a fourth or a fifth steam turbine, because as it is, the igneous rock exits this chamber at about 300 degrees Celsius. So it takes a while for this supercoolant to cool down all of this material. In each of the builds that we've made, I've always loved the sort of flat rocket platform. It really makes it look like a sort of spaceport. We always have one of these spaceport buildings, and I've tried to think of other designs to kind of, move away from this very specific thing that I do in every single colony, but I really love it. It does take a lot of work and a lot of material, but the flat spaceport design is by far one of my favorite features of this build. But now, it's time to get nuts. And I mean nuts. Our geothermal spikes have done a great job of extracting the heat out of the igneous rock. This igneous rock is down to 500 degrees. We still have a little bit of magma in here. And then I got to thinking, I wonder what would happen if you filled this area with steam and then just prevented dupes from coming in. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to lock this so no longer will dupes be able to come in here for pretty much ever. And we're going to fill this entire chamber with steam. And the goal is to turn the rest of this magma into igneous rock. Now, unfortunately, our magma biome had a little bit too much of empty space. It wasn't completely solid like most magma biomes, which caused it to have this sort of separation. And yeah, we could send our geothermal spikes all the way through, but that's a lot of diamond and quite frankly, a waste of time. I think we're just gonna fill it with steam. A lot of steam. And then let the geothermal spikes pick up that heat and send it out. You can see right now, because the geothermal spikes have kind of exhausted their capacity of what they can draw. This igneous rock here is at 274 degrees. Down here, it's at like 350. So why don't we heat this place up? I've already installed some insulated liquid pipes here, and they are not exchanging temperature with the environment yet, because this is a vacuum. Now, as soon as we fill this up, it will slowly start to exchange temperature, but the idea is that we're going to keep pushing more and more water in here to where it doesn't really have a chance to heat up. So all we really need to do here is turn the signal switch on and then watch this absolute mess. Oh, the first thing that's happening is we're getting sand from the polluted dirt. If you're not aware of how this happens, as soon as the polluted water comes in contact with hot enough material, it creates dirt. Well, then when you superheat dirt, it creates sand. Let's fast forward this a bit to see the hilarity in action. Already, the chambers are filling up with steam. And this steam will eventually suck all of the heat out of this magma. And why is that? Because the steam is now going to heat up our geothermal spike. This is not recommended, and I would never do this in a normal colony because this is going to be entirely too unstable. But for giggles, it is definitely fun. You can see this window tile is going up in heat, and just as soon as it does, the next window tile draws it out. The steam right now is at 500, 600 degrees, and we're pulling the water straight out of our main water tank. Which reminds me, as we venture into the fun of destroying the rest of this biome, let's go over some of the overviews so you can see how the colony turned out. Now, some of these overviews really slow it down. We're down to 4 and 5 FPS. And that's with a 2070 GTX and an i7 7800X. It is just the limitation of the simulation, definitely not of the hardware. For reference, my CPU is maxing out at 18% and my GPU at 17%. First up, the plumbing. It's not too bad. I like that we were able to maintain most of our plumbing lines through this main run here. What is hilarious, though, is the plumbing required for the dupe condos. Next up, the ventilation display. Here's all of our gas pipes. I thought this was particularly clean. And again, each one of our condos has their own vents. It is interesting to see the natural gas. We are pulling natural gas from Smellio and from our own natural gas geyser. It first feeds our kitchen, and we leave behind 4 gas tanks to make sure that the kitchen has enough natural gas even when both geysers go dormant. And the excess comes all the way down here, fills up these 10 gas tanks to feed our natural gas generators. Here is the oxygen display, and here's the power lines. Power always seems to get me when it comes to organization. I think this is decent, and you can see that we really prioritized having our main run down here. The heat overview, you gotta love the cold temps coming off of our base cooler. This thermo aqua tuner setup is responsible for keeping our food into a deep freeze and also for cooling our oxygen supply. And then finally, our decor. You gotta love the decor in the spaceport. That is hilarious. Everything else looks pretty horrible. We were able to keep the huge negative bonuses mostly out of our transportation run, and that's the primary reason why you keep your power spine some tiles away to make sure that negative decor does not affect your transportation run. Some places it can't be avoided, for instance on our steam vent tamers, because we needed the power lines there. And once again, the star of the show is definitely the dupe condos and the recreation rooms. Also important was keep the main entrance and exit to the base nicely decored, and that was assisted by some of these beautiful artifacts. We're up to about 8 kilos of pressure, and the temperature is about 1,000 to 1,100 degrees in the steam. It is rapidly taking some of the heat right out of this biome, and it's great because our door has gotten up to be 350 degrees, and it's just going to continue to rise as well. Definitely one way to finish off your magma biome. Turn the whole thing into a steam room. But now let's do some other crazy stuff. For instance, this thermo aqua tuner is sitting in a bath of 318 kilos of steam. And we're going to break it open. Alright, here comes Reflector to do the dastardly deed now. This is where all hope is lost. Here it comes. That's going to be a lot of steam, but let's not stop there. There's 500 kilos in this one. Yep, let's deconstruct that one. This one down here, even worse. 800 kilos. Let's open it up too. Oh, this one? 480 kilos? Come on out. We'll open you up too. I mean, why stop there? Let's go ahead and dump this oil tank too. Sure. And if we're dumping that one, well, we might as well dump this one too. And surely the magma wants to come out as well. So let's go ahead and do that as well. This one I definitely have to focus in on because it is going to be a dumpster fire. Oh, yes. There we go. 1,200 degrees of igneous rock in this huge water pool. The water pool that's emptying, which will then make it easier for it to flash what water is left. Let's help this out, shall we? Look at all the magma it has already turned into igneous rock, and it just keeps going. All these steam turbines were really starting to get up there because the temperature in our volcano sauna was up to 150, 160 degrees for a lot of power. But then we decided to dump all the water tanks on it, which is going to flood the steam turbines and pretty much cripple the entire colony. We might as well open up some gas reservoirs. Even as non-intelligent as the dupes are, I have a feeling they're like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Oh yes, let that natural gas free. Optimus? Yes, Bumblebee. There seems to be a leak in our oil tank. I think the last thing we need to do is let these shine nymphs go. So what we're going to do is just deconstruct this tile right here, and it'll let about 50 shine nymphs go. It actually is a pretty cool sight. If you've never accidentally made a hole into your shine bug reactor, highly recommended, although it will cripple your game. Be free, my friends. Be free. Oh, don't worry about that. It's only 300 rats of radiation and 100,000 lux. So before we go, I had a question about why we weren't going to the temporal tear. Well, unfortunately, we happened to start this game on a build in the DLC that did not have the temporal tear yet. It is unfortunate because I would have loved to unlock it and send a dupe on through, but we still were able to do the Home Sweet Home objective. I would have also loved to complete Cosmic Archaeology, but it looks like there's a current bug in the game where you actually can't research terrestrial artifacts, and they're all just counting as space artifacts. With that dumpster fire lit, it is time to call it an episode. Now we have the difficult choice of trying to decide what our next ONI series is going to be about. I've had a couple of good recommendations. Someone out there wants to see a zoo colony set up with all of the critters. I've also thought about doing a only dupe power challenge. Yes, no other power, just dupe wheel. We're also going to be introducing a RimWorld series. We're going to be going every other episode, so don't worry if you're not a big fan of RimWorld. We'll still have the ONI content coming at you. I highly recommend you giving RimWorld a chance. There are a ton of great mechanics in RimWorld, and if you allow yourself, you can really get into that colony sim as well. If you have recommendations for other series you'd like us to do, please let me know in the comments below. I had a great time destroying this base. I hope you had a good time watching it. I'll talk to you soon.